Hey guys, welcome back to the Paladins Alliance. Excited to be back. EPL's in full swing, and now that Group A is over, I wanted to go back and talk about a team that has been on a lot of people's minds for a while, and it's been on mine ever since the move actually happened. But that's Cloud9. Obviously, losing Interz and adding Buster, I think myself included, I definitely thought that this move wasn't necessary. I thought it was lateral at best, and in a lot of ways, it might have been a downgrade just because of how inactive Buster has been across his career, at least as of recent. And the fact that even when he was on Outsiders, he wasn't necessarily the end all be all necessary player to pop off for the Outsiders. So it just didn't feel like this move would have made any sense really. But I mean, obviously now they came out first in their group, went absolutely flawless within Group A. Of course, actually, yeah, just dropping one map against Outsiders. They 2-0'd EG, they 2-0'd G2 of all teams. They broke their nuke streak, or sorry, they broke their BO3 win streak, and then they beat Outsiders as well in a close 3-map affair. But regardless, what it brought to me as I was watching these games, it looked that Buster was pretty impressive, all things said, just in theory, just from the rounds that I was watching. But I wasn't positive to actually see whether or not there was a one-to-one comparison that I could make yet. So I went through basically all these demos, and I wanted to see for one, what are the roles that are changing for Buster now that he's taking Interz's roles, and how is he going to make it his own? Like, how is he actually approaching this part of the game, and is it the right decision for Cloud9 moving forward? So I basically decided to go through Interz's last event with Cloud9, which is the Rio Major, and then to go through Buster's EPL performances, basically the BO3s versus G2 and Outsiders, because I just don't count the EG game to be standard CS. So moving forward, that's basically what we're going to do with this video. We're just going to compare what Interz has provided, what type of style of CS he's played, and then try to compare it with what Buster has provided with EPL, and moving forward, whether that works for C9 or not. So without further ado, we'll get into a couple rounds from Interz. It's not going to be as much as the stuff from Buster because, look, I've already done a video on Interz, and you can check that out. A lot of those fundamentals and ideas about Interz have still stayed the same. It's the very first video that I've uploaded in this channel. I'll put it in the cards as well, but definitely check out that video if you just need a refresher on it. But we'll still go through just the high key points about Interz and how he approaches the game. So I'll start a bit with Mirage here, just the T side in particular for Interz. This is something that he just loves to do. He just lurks Palace on nearly every round, and it's not necessarily like a Rops type lurk where, you know, late round he'll walk out and try to take a heads up aim duel into a back CT. This is like just Interz sitting within Palace for just cutting out the extremity and making sure that Cloud9 can scale onto another part of the map, be it main, be it B, or even mid. But the point of this round in particular is not necessarily the extremities that he plays, because I think Buster decides to do a lot of this himself. It's more so how he decides to play these micro situations, and we'll see when it gets down to the actual final sight hit from Cloud9 how much of a loyal soldier Interz wants to play this and actually set up his teammates. He doesn't care about his life in a lot of ways. He is simply the utility scapegoat, and he is always going to get information for his stars to actually pop off. But we'll get into it just immediately. Very quick out the gates, Cloud9 want to just scrim out A, and they have some pretty abysmal trading patterns. SDY gets a kill through the molly as well, so C9 decide to scale back. And they decide to just park Interz here just for some A aggression, and he'll meet up with the rest of the team as they go into the B side. Axile will try to entry for Shiro again to set him up, and Interz will come out late cat. So C9 start to scale, they start to scale, and Interz starts to move up through the own cat smoke. He makes his position known, and he tries to smoke himself out just so he can make his way through. But you can see that Axile does get the trade onto the B site, and Shiro's out, but Perfecto, of course, a fantastic B anchor in his own right, gets a trade back. So now Interz moves out, and this is kind of the impressive stuff that I like about Interz. He's got a molly and 2 flashes, and all he wants to do is make sure that Shiro can be activated into the clutch. So he scales, and again, Interz is exposing himself to all possible angles so he can get any information, any aim duels to get any sort of bits and pieces over to Shiro so he can clutch up, because he knows that he's aware that if Shiro has all the information, he can definitely win any of these rounds. He has that much faith in his teammate. So Shiro gets one onto market window, and this is where Interz decides to throw a molly on right side and then just swing wide left side, just so he can try to get any bit of information. You see here, he exposes himself to this fight, and he gets that information on SDY, and he's well aware that Shiro, no matter the HP, no matter the situation, even the time on the clock, he will win the round. And of course, this guy's just way too aware. He understands. He posts up on right side of the smoky. He's aware that SDY would push that his own smoke, and he wins the 1v1. Of course, hats off to Shiro for being a fantastic player, but you've got to give your credit to Interz. And this is a lot of things that I brought up in the original video that I made, where he was just very willing to die in these T-side scenarios, get damage in, get kills in, and most importantly, get information in to set up his stars. So this is one of the key things that you want to keep in mind when you think about Interz in particular and what he brings to the T side of Cloud9. So we'll switch over to the CT side of Interz's game, and again, I've just picked out one round on each half of Interz's game, and I could go much more in depth in the actual Unsung Heroes video, so again, check out that one. But I mostly want to just get these high arching points about Interz through these rounds, and just the ideas of how he wants to approach the game, and then how we can actually compare that with what we saw from Buster throughout EPL, and the improvements or, you know, regressions that Cloud9 get from him as a player. But Interz plays mid on Vertigo, can tilt over to the B sites, as you can see in this round in particular, but is very passive with how he approaches. He likes to just basically gather information, pepper down bullets at range, and not necessarily give up his life very easily, to basically stall for as long as possible. And it's one really, really awesome thing that Cloud9 could rely upon through a lot of these games. And he was very much a linchpin and would never give away anything for free, which is a very big thing. But the issue with that is that, I mean, on one hand, yes, you're not giving away anything, but sometimes you're not getting anything out of it either. And this could come back to bite him. But this is obviously just a more positive side of the thing. And you'll see just in this round in particular how valuable it is. It can be to Cloud9. So Axile, of course, tucked into the cubby side, and Interz just wants to get this bottom B stairs control, so they decide to scale together. And they'll get an opening kill out of it. Shiro as well off of mid. And we're now into this 5v3 scenario, and it just feels as though Cloud9 should be able to close out this map. And, I mean, this is not anything special, right? But Interz, again, is not necessarily playing to get the kills and close out this map. He wants to secure the map just by gathering information and being the trade fragger to basically close this game out. So he goes on to jump up, and Hobbit's here, Shiro is here as well, and he's just like mildly swinging just to watch the edge of the smoke, and he gets information that Yabby is close by, so he alerts Hobbit and makes sure that Hobbit is just well aware that he has to get one here with the angle that he has. There is a way back for Heroic into this round. They keep making noise, and see, Interz just tucks back again. He doesn't want anything to do with any of these fights. He doesn't want to get flashed off the angle. He knows that Shiro is going to root back from CT to get another kill. And even when it's just Cadian in this clutch, right? It's all these little things that you kind of just gather about Interz, and they know they've already had it done to them once, where they've been 1v4 by Cadian, and a lot of it came down to over peaks, overzealous plays, and Interz decides to kind of tuck in and secure the round. He knows that Shiro has got all the attention on him, and so he jumps up and tries to secure the round that way. So I really just like how Interz decided to approach that. Very passive in certain scenarios, gathered a lot of information, and was willing to set up Axile as well as Shiro to kind of propel them through that round. And again, it's a lot of setup. It's a lot of support. It's very dedicated support in that sense. And that is a big difference in comparison to a player like potentially Buster that we'll get into right now. Okay, so let's switch over to how Buster decides to approach just mid Vertigo. We can do the one-to-one comparison right now instantly. And yes, Cloud9 is up 14-6, and yes, G2 does not necessarily have the prettiest buy as of right now. But it's just the approach, and honestly, Buster doesn't even get any kills in this round. It's basically just the fundamental way he's approaching mid, and just that specific position in comparison to Interz that I'd like to just showcase to you as to how he'd like to approach it. And this is usually a spot that Interz will play in majority of the rounds, like this elevator spot, rotate in mid, to get that information to listen. And you'll see, I mean, he's looking straight at the ground just to hear all of where G2 might be going towards. And Shiro is posted up here, but again, Buster decides to try to be a little bit more proactive in the way he approaches it. As soon as Shiro takes that first shot, Buster is here to kind of fight with bullets rather than utility. You know, Interz might have dropped a flash there, he might have dropped a molly or a smoke, but this time Buster actually wants to fight even with the full kit. He knows that Shiro is there to help out, and I do believe he gets a little bit of damage off with the nade and whatnot, but Shiro reaggresses because he's aware that Buster is here to help out. Shiro gets one, and he should get the other as well. But regardless, right, it's not necessarily the fact that Buster doesn't get any kills there. It's the principle that he's trying to be proactive in this scenario. And you'll see it across the various maps that I've pulled, because I've pulled it across a lot of maps just to show the similarities and differences that Buster likes to approach the game. And the biggest thing that you can take away from this video is just how much more willing he is to actually fight with his gun rather than try to stall out for his players like Shiro and Axile. And perhaps that little boost of firepower could come back to help C9 as it did in a game against G2 here, where they decided to, you know, win a BO3 and just kind of shock the world with how good G2 has been looking as of recent. So here against G2 on Inferno, this is one of these types of buys that G2 has, that if you give them a lot of space, if you give them a lot of comfort, this can kind of spiral out of control, and you can get overrun by these Mac 10s. You can get overrun by these Tech 9s. And I like to see this a little bit more of a dynamic play from C9, where they try to stick it to G2 by pushing apartments, by pushing alt mid, and actually dueling with them because they have the superior weaponry. And Buster's actual hand in that is much more impressive to me in comparison to something that Interz might do, where he might just be throwing the flashes here, he might be throwing the Molotovs, but you want actual bodies here to make G2 uncomfortable, make them unaware as to where they should be looking. Obviously, the different angles of elevation as well can also help with that. So you just see here, you see Hobbit taking duels, Buster also tries to join in. And just this suppressing fire and this uncomfortable nature that Buster decides to lay down through bullets and nades is really, really impressive. And so even after all of this is being said, there's still a way for G2 to win this round. You know, Nico's Deagle is still alive. And that's when C9 decided to pull back. And Buster still makes the round-winning play in a way. I mean, obviously Shiro will secure this round in particular. But it's just, again, the principle. Where Buster will decide to kind of realize that there's no information that's coming top brackets. So he'll push apartments eventually here. And as he's pushing apartments, he'll make the silent drop as well after he's cleared all of T apartments, which is really nifty. And Shiro will be waiting in CT, and this is basically like the round-winning play. But luckily, Shiro just gets 2 of the kills anyways. I believe there was a gap in the smoke. But again, proactivity to take these heads-up aim duels regardless of the buy that's being thrown at him, and just a willingness to secure the round and aggress rather than kind of play a buddy system with maybe Hobbit in late round, something that Interz might have done in that scenario. Again, 2 different ways of approaching the game, but with how in your face Cloud9 wants to get in some of these CT rounds, when they do aggress, having a player like Buster add into that kind of fuel to the fire could be an extra step and an extra facet that Cloud9 need to kind of take themselves over the top. So again, the very next round, I just want to showcase kind of the drawbacks of having a player like this and what it can actually do, and how there's still a lot of ironing out that needs to be done for Buster and how he approaches the game, getting up to date with the kind of rotations that Cloud9 likes to throw. But Buster, he'll throw his mid smoke as usual, and he'll throw a T balk molly. They basically want to get aggressive into halls, and you'll see Axile aggresses from the balk side, and Monacy and Hunter combine to get that kill. But where Interz might have thrown a molly to stop these players from coming, Interz wants to surge forward and search for the trade to equalize things out and make things, again, that much more uncomfortable for G2 to not get settled into the 5v4. And that kind of awkward timing catches out Hunter, and Buster wants more. He wants to look for a little bit more just because the brackets control is on the way from G2, so you can see that smoke from Hooksy onto Arch side and the molly onto Boiler. has Buster thinking like, maybe I can phase the smoke here, maybe I can kind of jostle with G2's timings here. But unluckily, the molly spreads just a little bit, and it ticks on Buster. He realizes that his position is known. He throws a nade, falls off, which is no harm, no foul. I mean, you're into the 4v4. Maybe you can still win this round. But I think this is the kind of drawback of Buster as of right now. You know, maybe in a couple months time this mistake wouldn't have happened, but absolutely no information given from the banana side of things. And you have Shiro posted up on the angle as well, but Buster decides to pivot on a very indecisive rotation to B, and you can definitely see just with the way he's actually moving his crosshair, this is very much a autopilot type decision where he's not necessarily thinking this rotation all the way through. And with that indecision comes the pouncing from G2, and they immediately decide to take Arch here. So as soon as that happens, Buster realizes it's too late. He's mollied off in library. He can't contest whatsoever, and Hobbit is stuck on an island on Balk. Now keep in mind, if Buster was actually posted on library, you've got a great crossfire with Hobbit on Balk, and there's very much a possibility that they can pull that round through. It's again indecision in the rotation. So you can see just the kind of growing pains that comes with Buster, and these kind of mistakes happened a lot in Katowice and was a key reason as to why they just collapsed. But these mistakes are also lessening. And I like kind of the first half of that round where you can definitely see that he's willing to take those trades and willing to kind of get in the face of G2. But you can also see that with that comes a little bit of indecision. And this is definitely something that C9 is still working on. And Buster really has to lock this down, just considering how important his role is with kind of being that body to draw attention, to take heads-up aim duels, and to set up his stars simultaneously. So before we get into how Buster approaches Cloud9's T sides on Ancient, I do also just want to mention, I mean, I don't have any rounds picked out on the CT side in particular, but he does have a different role where he's playing a bit heavier of a B anchor, and he's given up Cave, because Interz used to be the Cave player, and I didn't necessarily like that. They did like to put him in a little bit more important roles, but this time they're actually putting Nafany and a little bit of Axile as well if they want to aggress down lane, which I like a little bit more. It feels like a bit more efficiency in their resource allocation. So moving forward, when you do watch these games on Ancient, I do like that change that they put Buster in more safer roles. This also means that he does take some tougher duels, and for that reason, it definitely puts some weight on the stats that Buster produces. It's not necessarily the prettiest. And as well, on the flip side of things, on the T side, again, he is playing the same roles that Interz has, where he is watching B lane aggression, going in first to kind of create space and gather information at the same time. And I think this is one thing where 1-to-1 in comparison to Interz, he's doing it pretty well. And I think there's definitely certain scenarios where you could definitely see him do it maybe even better if you give him a little bit more time in some of these roles. So he smokes off mid as usual, and they decide to scale. And Nafany's made it into pocket. Buster's watching this lane aggression, this banana aggression in particular, and they'll basically just send him out. He'll just try to scoot as forward as much as possible. He realizes they're on a low util purchase, so he can't necessarily get mollied or naded out. So he'll just start to scale here very, very slowly. A little bit of time. Yeah, he drops his utility just to make sure. And so they'll throw bits and pieces. I believe this is the left side smoke on their scale up. And so they're aware that Jaime is on this angle, back temple. And so this nade is absolutely fantastic from Buster. He'll throw a flash as well, and this will bait out the shot from Jaime. And this is where Buster very keenly just decides to go through. Obviously, they don't have any utility to actually scale through, but this contact play is super, super smart, just with the lack of information that Outsiders has. And I don't know if the resolution actually lets it spot out there, but Buster spots just a little bit of a barrel there from Chiron. This procs Nafany to have every bit of information going into this aim duel, and he'll finish it off with Buster. Obviously, semantics ensue here, and since they don't have any utility, Jaime has a free line onto Banana and gets 2 kills. But the way they play this 3v4 is really smart. They decide to actually be proactive on the left side and try to get kills early, but it doesn't work out. Hobbit does get one back, and so they're into this 2v3 scenario. And Hobbit will do a lot for C9. And Buster, again, he just wants to play for the round. He wants to confirm everything. And it felt as though that Buster would not be able to close that round out, but a snappy 1v1 that honestly, I thought Interz might not have won. But key things to take away from this round: the ability to, again, take space and be proactive with the utility that he's given. Great little nade there and flash combo to make James uncomfortable and get him off the angle. Although they do rescind 2 kills, as soon as the bomb goes down, Buster again plays for the round and confirms things after Hobbit has a fantastic round of his own. So just proactivity again, and just willingness to take aim duels, even on the T side. But he's actually winning these aim duels, which is a big deal. Again, back on Vertigo, Buster still plays the same roles that Interz likes to play with the mid aggression, but he's a little bit more active in it. I mean, this round in particular is not that active. It's more just this round is more just to show the individual prowess that he can actually bring. There's not often that you get this from these kind of supportive players, but to see it from Buster this early on is always really cool to see, against especially how skilled this outsider team can be. You'll just see, I believe that's a side hall molly to kind of proc them to scale up on A. Buster will get some spam damage in. I don't think necessarily any of it lands. I'm still not really sure if that can actually be bangable. But regardless, they're into this 3v3 that Flit decides to pull back, and I think Flit or Kicker should get another one through the smoke on Ashiro here. But Buster will use all of his utility here before he decides to start taking duels. And now you're into this 2v3, and you think, okay, well, Outsiders have firmly jostled back for control. These smokes are going to start to fade, and things are going to get really hard for C9. You're going to need it for an individual to go huge. And Buster rises up to that occasion. Watch for the crosshair placement on the first. Flit, I believe, missed the shot, but the kill on a Fame is the one that's honestly most impressive to me. And then 13 seconds left, he realizes he doesn't want any shenanigans to happen with a molly or a smoke or whatever, or any bits of utility, or maybe even aggression from Kicker as the bomb is going down. So he plays atop the boxes and goes for this duel. He just knows that he's got to win it. He spots a little bit of leg, and he keeps the spray through on the Kicker and locks in that 10th round. It's really ballsy from Buster, and it's really risky, but it comes out to be super, super valuable and to lock in a 10th round for them on their T side. And this is kind of one of the nicer things that I like about Buster. When this aim is actually on display, it's super, super valuable for C9, and you can definitely see that it elevates C9 just a little bit more. And you know, there's definitely a conversation on whether or not C9 even needed this in the first place, but as Buster gets more and more acclimated in terms of aim, in terms of meta, in terms of rotation, I love watching this guy play, at least from the limited sample size that I've been seeing from EPL. I hope that he can definitely keep this kind of level up, because it does add a lot to C9 as a whole. But I was walking into these demos expecting a worse version of Interz, but instead I've been getting more so a player that is approaching the game much differently in terms of how Interz approached the game. And there is a world where this could actually elevate C9 to a higher level, and overall I'm very, very happy with what I saw from Buster throughout EPL. Now, whether or not it is just because, you know, their star players Shiro and Axile are firing on all cylinders and they've just found a flow state is one thing, but I'd like to think that some of these things that I'm seeing and these ideas that I'm seeing from Buster are good in the long run, and that these are here to stay, and that Buster can be a true force for Cloud9. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video in particular. I definitely enjoyed watching and seeing C9 actually perform. They're definitely one of these forces in World Counter-Strike that I want to see start to lifting trophies, just because of the kind of skill that they have with Shiro and Axile on the squad. And maybe Buster is the player to do that. I'm not necessarily sure just yet, but in this just head-to-head comparison, you can very clearly see Buster is just a bit more proactive in terms of fragging, and he wants to take more duels, and he wants to get more in the faces of the opponents that he's playing, and it really all lives and dies on his individual skill, whereas Interz would never have to have that worry, right? Because utility-wise, information-wise, it didn't matter whether or not he was feeling it, because he was always in position to set up his players for success. And so in that sense, that stability would always remain, and there's definitely more volatility on Buster's side of things, but the upside of Buster actually being individually skilled could be bigger in the long term, and it could be the thing that push them over the edge to start winning titles. And if they do, that's when, you know, the field gets wide open. You've got obviously G2 and Heroic, but then you add in Cloud9 into that mix, and FaZe isn't far behind, and you've got a really rocking top four. And I would love for C9 to join that conversation, especially with Buster kind of trying to rally these troops back ahead. Of course, there's also the intangible that I've been talking about, that he has played with the major finalists before of Avant-Garde, and he has seen the tippity top of Counter-Strike in particular. And so having that kind of experience could be something that could really settle in some of these players that haven't had that kind of experience alongside your Hobbit. And I'm hopeful that this could be a move that works out in C9's favor. If not, definitely they're going to be kind of scratching their head and realizing that they maybe needed that more of a supportive element. But as of right now, I'm liking the potential that Buster has in store, and I'll be the first to admit that perhaps I could be wrong with kind of C9 scouting tactics, and this could be the move that C9 need for the future. But that's all. That's all for me from here. EPL is going to continue on. I think I'm going to continue to maybe make videos after these groups are over and kind of look back as to maybe a team or two as to what they kind of created across these kind of long group stages and try to analyze them further. But yeah, a lot of videos that are gestating, talk show ideas that are gestating as well. Check out the Max Runs 30 podcast that I'm doing with Eminem's Jeff over on the Max Runs 30 YouTube channel. I'll probably send out a post again. I think we're having some audio posts happening. Rescope will be returning on the channel, so keep an eye out for that. And I do have another talk show on the way alongside Cole and Neokai and Brandon, so B-Dog. Finally, we also have a podcast, 2.5 Talent, Trav CS and Neokai, that we've been doing on Neokai's channel, so check that out as well. But that's all from me. Stay tuned for more CS content, and we'll see you guys shortly, hopefully. Peace.